thank you very much for this opportunity to speak today to the organizers and all of you for being here. It is a real honor to be here. And following on, our chairman, Lord Putnam, spoke yesterday, and it's a particular honor to follow on and represent him today since he can't be here, and the rest of Futurelab, which I like to describe as the mothership for the future of education. I've been with them only for a year, so I can't take credit for all the amazing work that Futurelab has done for the past 8 years. But in fact, today what I want to talk about is the more general issues and share some case studies from work that I've been doing over the past 20 years in the field of education, right from young learning up to lifelong learning, and also a topic we haven't discussed much at the conference so far, which I refer to as relearning, or retraining both the brain and the cultural learning context for people who have been badly injured, suffered stroke, have been in a coma, coming out of locked-in syndrome. Because I really believe, and this was referred to last night, that the learning tools that we can create using technology apply to all of us. And that when we discuss disability or special learning, if we remember that all of us one day in this aging population are going to need some more accessible interfaces for learning and relearning, a lot of the economic arguments as well as the social arguments for always marginalizing special learners go away. So I really want to look at inclusive education across all ages, which are going to apply to all of us very soon. So very briefly, I'm going to speak for exactly 27 minutes, as agreed. And the first minute, I have to try to read my own horrible handwriting, so please bear with me. Last evening, there was a lot of discussion of this question: how much time do kids spend on social networks, and is this dangerous, to paraphrase? I'm really interested in the topic of time. It's my main focus as well, but I have a very different angle on time that I'd like to share with you. I think that we need to really be asking, how could we best spend our time together, both live and online? And that we includes educators in the thousands, including all of you here, who have taken your precious, precious time to be here together live. How could we make best use of that? But also technologists, politicians, policymakers, medical doctors, educators of all kinds, and learners of all ages and abilities. So instead of really looking at, is it dangerous that kids use, and many people use so much of their time online, I'd say that's an interesting question. Much more interesting is, given that they do, and that we're not going to be able to stop it, and that we are going to have to keep running to catch up if we aren't of the generation born into the social network age, how can we create learning tools and engaged parental and community engagement models that would mean that it is responsible and safe and productive for anyone to be there? And that's what I want to talk about and give some examples from. Futurelab has a new project called Synapsis, which addresses many of the issues that our colleagues have introduced. And sadly, I don't have time to talk about it now, but if anyone's interested, I'd love to introduce the whole concept and show some other examples later. But first, very, very quickly, last evening, there was also some discussion of the One Laptop Per Child program and some other initiatives for so-called inclusive education, none of which I want to criticize now because I haven't got time to justify my arguments. But what I do want to say is that the main lesson learned from that and every other educational inclusive technology program worldwide, including several that I've started and been involved in, the main lesson learned is that when new teaching communities are provided with tools, or new learning communities, sorry, are provided with tools that they didn't ask for and didn't help to invent themselves and customize locally and make relevant locally, then what they will tell us using those tools often doesn't match what we wanted them to say. That sounds rather obvious, but we need to bear it in mind. People will use any tool we give them for what they need it for, and that will take us onto new maps, which is an exciting challenge, not a problem, if we look at it that way. So we need to eliminate the us and the them and spend our time together as educators and learners of all ages and all abilities, building a consensus around the possibilities, including building together the new technologies for extreme users and learners. So what I'm going to talk about and now share with you for the next sort of 25 minutes is a range of case studies. They're going to go by very, very quickly. But really, I want to use that time to introduce a wide number of people who simply can't be here today, but who are far more interesting than I am, and who I think have something to teach all of us, certainly have taught me an enormous amount over the past 20 years. And the theme of the case studies is really this, that we should, in my opinion, never use technology only for its own sake in teaching, but it does have amazing and inevitable applications in teaching, which we need to be part of and build together. We need to look at co-opetition models. I haven't heard the phrase used, but many people have spoken of working together in non-competitive, collaborative learning models, which aim to get a group win across ages, levels of abilities, learners, parents, teachers working together. And invent our future in learning together in that kind of way. So briefly, as we go to the video, I just want to talk about connected learning is another term I haven't heard used here so far. We've heard of blended learning, e-learning, distance learning, and many other forms. Connected learning, Catherine Milton and others have discussed as the very basic concept, which underlies all my case studies, which is that learning is never distant. Learning is always embodied. It's always within ourselves. And it's within ourselves connected to someone else, a teacher, a learner, a parent, a community, our peers. And I think if we bear that in mind as we move forward through all these technology examples, then the specter of social networks for education is less if we build in the responsibility models I want to talk about. Okay, so if we could play the video, and I'll speak over top. Hope it's there. Lovely. Thanks. This will be 20 years of work I've been involved in, passing by at the speed of light, except for the first minute, which gives you a moment to tune in. So it's about 21st century learning tools for all. And the people that I introduce through these case studies are far more important than me or anything I could possibly have to say. But it's all about this very basic idea, and it actually echoes some of our colleagues' points earlier. From André Gide, one doesn't discover new lands without consenting to lose sight of the horizon for a very long time. That's the scary thing for all of us who weren't born digital natives and have to keep running to keep up. So, to think about that and to think about extreme learners, people who perhaps haven't yet been able to tell us what they already know and what they're capable of knowing, because we haven't yet provided any tools with which they can do so. That's my main theme. So as educators in the 21st century, we're faced with new challenges and also with a new set of faster and more connected horizon scanning tools every day, and may be at risk of losing sight of the original aim of our explorations as a result of media overload. Yet the tools we co-create and co-design with our students, whoever they may be, are those that tend to bring the horizon of impactful connected learning back into the foreground. And when I speak of co-creation, I know that many of you are engaged in co-design of learning tools with your students. What I really want to talk about is how we can get back to that energy of unself-conscious collaboration that isn't about a them and an us, educators and learners, but that's about really together from the ground up with parents and families involved, making our educational tools and methods. These days, we devise new tools and methods for teaching and learning in a world that's so dynamic, so full of rapid and unpredictable changes in the social, political, environmental, also economic, and technology sectors, that practice-based learning in the age of Web 2.0, which is always already morphing into Web 3.0 and beyond, runs the risk of losing any sense of even the most recent history. How best can we learn from the successes as well as the failures of past and current methods? That's what I want to ask. And recent history includes, one of our colleagues already said, you know, the internet, 1989. That's where my case studies begin. It's history, it's ancient history to many of our learners today. And how can we engage learners of all ages and abilities in the process of co-inventing their own learning spaces, tools, curricula, and communities? So I want to begin at the beginning by showing, in my first example, what worked in a very basic and effective way in some of the most successful interactive learning experiments of the late 80s and early 1990s, and to begin to map a journey through the lessons learned in the past 15 and 20 years, through to some suggestions for keeping everyone motivated, all of us wanting to get out of bed in the morning and keep working in these fields.